Oh, happy Wednesday. Welcome, everybody. We've all been listening to the buzz, and now it's time to get this party started and kick off.
I didn't run into the table. What?
I unfortunately have to start with the least welcoming welcome of all. If you have not already, if you could take a second to turn off your microphone. But that doesn't mean you're not welcome, and that doesn't mean we don't want to eventually hear from you, but if you could just turn off your microphone, we'd really appreciate it. As I said, welcome. Feel free to throw in the chat who you are, where you're from. Looking at the list of individuals here, I don't really know if anyone needs much more of a bio than just your names and all the good things that you've all been doing. When we say this is a happy hour, it truly is a happy hour, so feel free to let us know what you're drinking or not. Tito Tito. So with no further ado, it is my true honor and privilege to introduce the panelists, starting with Kareem Weaver. I almost feel silly, by the way, giving your bios, because, like, truthfully, who doesn't know them, but you've earned them. Kareem is a former educator. He is the co-founder and executive director of Fulcrum, and he is Oakland's NAACP's second VP. Kata, Kata, I only asked about your first name.
It's okay. It's Solo, like Han Solo.
Okay. When Kate and I met for the first time, and I was like, help me out. Open syllable, schwa, what are we talking about? Her whole name is in my entire phonics unit this week. In any event, Kata Solo is a former educator who leads the Science of Reading Classroom Initiative. Kate Christ is a literacy expert who now consults with states and districts about the ELA curriculum. Abby Boroff is an elementary teacher with 19 years in the classroom. Abby, you and I are neck and neck with our years end. And Karen Vates is an ELA curriculum expert and the catalyst for the Curriculum Insight Project. Karen reached out to me, I guess about a month and a half ago, and told me her thoughts on what needed to be done for curriculum and curriculum decisions. And it was just brilliant. And it took off like wildfire, because the need is there and it's important. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Chat is your friend. Please feel free to use it. We will be monitoring the chat as much as we can, while also keeping the dialogue going. I would like to promise that we'd get to every question, but that would make a liar out of me, because I can't actually promise that. But I can promise you that we will do our very best to get to all the questions that are in there. Karen is going to start us off, and whether you are drinking tea or Tito's, you're definitely going to want to fill up, because this is going to be quite the insightful hour-ish of time. So Karen, if you don't mind, would you do us the honors of starting us?
Sure thing. I'm going to give it the most executive of executive summaries, really keep it short, but just share a bit about what's coming with the Curriculum Insight Project. This has been a labor of love and a labor of collaboration behind the scenes for about a year now. Just the community of educators who have been a part of this movement to get more evidence-based reading instruction into schools. The folks who believe that curriculum matters in that work. If we believe in the learnings of Soul to Story, we believe that curriculum has played a key role in bringing less evidence-based practices into classrooms. So then we have to believe that if we can get excellent curriculum into schools and support teachers with successful implementation of those materials, then we can get better practices into schools. But there have been some troubling trends in this space, and regular discourse about some of the headwinds that we've been facing in getting to that place where we're giving teachers better resources to empower success. So I really am going to keep it short, because we could spend a lot of time, and I think we probably spend a lot of time talking about the why of this project, but the what's coming. You all see my screen.
I love you to the moon and back.
I know the other one.
Oh my gosh, it's bedtime for somebody. I love that.
I love the moon and back too. Please tell her, please.
So what's coming? We have teams that are authoring reports on 6 programs as nominated by the field. programs on the left, a series of some of the newer basal programs where we've seen just constant questions you cannot miss if you are in the Science of Reading Facebook group, that practically every other post for the last 6 weeks has been, who knows something about fill in blank program? And very often it is this newest generation of programs that come from the major publishers, where I think we all know the curriculum landscape is simply too opaque. So we see a lot of questions, and it feels important to talk about these programs. But the Interreading, Benchmark Advance, and My View are the programs that I would say, if I look at why did educators and professional learning leaders, why have those bubbled up in conversations and in our open call to the field about what this project should focus on. Those bubbled up because there's been some concern that their reviews on ed reports don't necessarily reflect the quality within. So that's a conversation that feels like it needs to be had. We are still seeing units of study and F&P remaining quite rooted in a number of districts that are focusing on improving the foundational skills component of the work that they're doing, but leaving the rest of the program in use without modifications. And speaking for me, I feel like the other issues with those programs have gone without the attention that they deserve. And so reports really focusing on those programs and what educators need to think about what those programs feel overdue, a conversation we can't have enough. And because we felt as a collective like one thing that needs to happen in this space is that to know what less than ideal looks like, you do have to know what good looks like. And there is a set of programs that are, by and large, there is no perfect curriculum. Let me be the first and last to say it. I think we all know that, but there are programs that have much more consistently meet the expectations of what good looks like. And we need to be talking about that too, the example and the non-example, if you will. So it felt important to take at least one program and say, let's author a report on a program that does in fact meet all of the criteria that we've identified here. And Bookworms was the consensus position for the program that deserved attention because Bookworms hasn't earned an all green review. And I honestly don't know anyone that thinks that that's the right call for that program. So that's what's coming, is a series of reports. We don't in any way expect to stop here necessarily, but one has to start somewhere. We'll talk a couple times. By the time I stop presenting this very few slides, I'll throw our public come one, come all and share your perspectives form into the chat so that I hope anyone that hasn't filled that out will do so. We've seen many more nominees than there are programs on this list, but again, one has to start somewhere. But we'll keep responding to feedback from the field about where there's sort of collective interest in going deeper. And so who's authoring the reports? This is really the distinguishing factor in what we're up to, or one of the key distinguishing factors. All of our report authoring teams include educators using the programs who have the materials in their hands, but have had the materials in their classrooms. And that's really important. Alongside, as part of the team, literacy experts, professional learning leaders who have been in districts using multiple of these programs. So you have this combination of, I'm using this program myself, I really know what's working and what isn't working for my students, and can speak with a level of expertise that no one reviewing on paper, I think, can necessarily begin to approach. And you also have this group of leaders in each team who've been in districts seeing a range of programs. And so that insight on what does this program look like and what does the landscape look like, so that we can be talking comparatively about programs and have that vantage point, that feels really important. And it's worth taking a moment, because I don't know that we've already alluded to Ed Reports reviews and the ways that they've colored the landscape, but also pushed our thinking on the need for this work. I think there's a real misconception about who's eyes behind the curtain on the Ed Reports reviews. One of the most esteemed state leaders in the country testified to her state board last week that Ed Reports was expert reviews that you could take to the bank. And I almost fell off my chair. Ed Reports reviews are completed by teams of educators. If you look at the Ed Reports website, they describe each review as being completed by a team of 4 to 5 educators who receive 25 hours of training. And there's no indication that those review teams are in any way include educators who've actually used the program in their classrooms. I actually have no reason to believe that they do. So when you think about it that way, it's actually a little surprising that the market has come to put so much of what states bless as good enough for ESSER funds and more in the hands of reviews that were completed that way. So we really think that this combination of users plus experts is the dream team, and we're excited to put out reports that cover do programs improve outcomes? What do we know about that? And what do we not know about that? It feels really important to start to center that in our conversations. Do these reports incorporate key research-based practices, including those practices in the foundational skills realm, but also well beyond foundational skills? And are programs usable? And how can we make tangible aspects of usability? It's not just an eye of the beholder. There are probably ways we can quantify usability, like what's the volume of materials given to a teacher if we know that there are 180 days in a school year and we can boil down really the amount of instructional time that we have in an ELA block. Are teachers being given volumes of materials that actually match the amount of instructional time they have in a year? That's a really tangible way to look at usability. And it's among the criteria that we'll look at to be considering program quality. And I think tangibility is one of the watchwords that we're trying to advance in this conversation. I actually think that if we look at the last few years and the ways that the science of reading conversation has really advanced, it was the times that we could really make tangible for educators what good looked like and what problematic looked like and why. And we saw people's eyes opened and minds changed because they could see predictable text in social media, and they could watch the Purple Challenge video and in just a few minutes really put together, hold on a second, this is the kind of practice that could be leading to flawed foundational skills and impeding children's success with decoding. That kind of tangibility has been inspiring, I think, for a lot of us in the space. And it's a good reminder that we haven't had that kind of tangibility from the reports that have come out in the space. So it's nice to read paragraphs of someone's summary and synthesis of what they saw in a program. We think it's a lot more powerful when we can actually go to the tapes and help bring educators across the country to the tapes about what's under the hood of these programs. And I'm only going to use one example. We haven't released any of our reports yet. And so this is the tiniest of tiny illustrations, but one thing that we found ourselves really talking about today was a detail in into reading that our project team surfaced as one way to be giving tangibility to the conversation about basal programs. And broadly, I think we should actually take a moment to honor the fact that each of the programs from the major publishers that we're talking about here, if we talk about into reading, for example, into reading is better than what was coming out of Houghton Mifflin in previous generations of programs. And that is something to be celebrated. The work that Ed Reports has done to put out critical reviews of programs a few years back that sent publishers back to the drawing board to take on that continuous improvement effort did in fact raise the floor of programs in the space. And that is a welcome development. But often that was done in the estimation of folks who've looked closely at these programs by adding things and not subtracting things. And I've heard many folks on these teams talking about how you've got the structured literacy part, but you've still got a lot of balanced literacy parts. And then you've got these other parts and all these optional, just choose your own adventure elements to these programs. And it's like a smorgasbord. There are healthy parts and there are unhealthy parts. And I know if hopefully educators would show up and pick the healthy parts, but we all know that sometimes it's too easy to fall into the familiar thing, as opposed to the the more instructionally nutritious, more rigorous thing. So here was the exemplar that we were talking about today, where for teachers in first grade who use Into Reading, when they go into Reading, they have access to 7,524 resources to use with that program. And those resources are a range of things. We'll talk more when we get to the process of putting out reports about what else is in there, what all is in there. But just to take a second and think about that. We talk about basals being bloated and there being some fluff in there and some less nutritious things, but that's very different from saying there are 7,524 resources. That puts a fine point on the problem that we've described as basal bloat. And when we stop and we really start to drill into that and think about how does that many options for a teacher, how does that degree of choose your own adventure line up against the goal of systematic instruction? If we all want systematic phonics instruction, if we know that knowledge building is best done in a systematic fashion, can you possibly be doing systematic work in any of these realms with all of those resources for teachers to sift through, or even for districts to sift through? So those are some of the realities that, while this is the tiniest of tiny examples, I think this premium on tangibility is really the other superpower of the project. And how can you help? I'm going to throw that, please nominate yourselves or share this with friends link into the chat, because we continue to want feedback from the field and additional educators on the bench in this effort. And with that, I'm going to hush up and would be really excited to see what questions boil up in the chat.
Actually, Karen, thank you so much. That was such a great way to frame the beginning of the conversation. You know, also here is Kata and Kate and Abby and Kareem. And what I would love to hear from each of you, if you don't mind, is get us to how you got where you are now. What brought you here in this moment, in this time, to involve yourself with this project? And I was thinking, but please, you guys, feel free to override me on this. But if you didn't mind, I was thinking maybe, Kareem, if we could hold you to the last of the 4 to go, and then that way we could maybe keep you talking. I know that's hard for you. So, Kata, you're my first one on my screen. Do you want to jump in, or?
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, Karen and Virginia, for putting this together, and thanks everybody for coming out tonight. And spending your Wednesday evening, or I guess early evening or late evening, depending on where you are in the country, with us. So I think my why for this project is really twofold. I think first, I was initially drawn to this project because it's all about elevating teacher voice. I think teachers, Karen just underscored this, but teachers are using these curricula every single day, and their observations and assessments around quality and usability should really be driving these adoption cycles that we're seeing all across the country in basically every single state, in every single county. And instead what's happening is, I think, the opposite is happening, right? And I think so really, like, the first thing that really jumps out at me is this project just honors teacher voice and expertise. And then second, I'm really afraid of pendulum swings, right? Like, reading is having a serious moment in this country right now. Frankly, thanks to everyone on this call. And we have this huge opportunity, right, to support teachers with great curricula. But at the same time, if we can't separate the good from the bad, or, you know, the best from the better, I worry that this current moment that we're in is going to pass us by, and we'll just experience a second pendulum swing. So I guess I'm driven by fear and by deep interest in honoring teacher expertise.
Yeah, Kate or Abby, do you want to add to that?
Recording in progress.
Kate, can you jump in? It seems like
Yeah.
Abby's frozen. Great, thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Hi, all. First of all, I just want to say that Rockford, Illinois is somewhere in the house tonight, and that's where I am from. So hi, friends from Rockford. And I also saw friends from Reno, which is where I live now. It's very exciting, and lots of other friends from all over the place. So it's just really appreciate y'all spending some time with us
From
tonight.
Alex.
And I joined this particular project. I've been working around curriculum and with curriculum for pretty heavily for the last 10 years. And there have been, early efforts were really just around like lessons and units, and those being reviewed by panels of teachers, and the power of that to sort of indicate to the field what needed to be done, and the hope that it would, the publisher's criteria and others would sort of tip the work and really began to see good quality stuff coming from really nimble publishers. So not big, huge clearinghouses, not big basils, not big anthologies, but much more sort of smaller groups. And I think that the challenge that I see is sort of twofold. One is there's not a lot of transparency in the review process. And in the last 3 years, I've really worked with a lot of nonprofits who are helping with curriculum implementation, or education companies that are helping with curriculum implementation, and what happens on the ground when something that is said to be really highly quality aligned to standards, as it turns out is not, is very messy and undermines the sort of promise that standards alignment as a quality floor for education provides. And then I think also that the idea that curriculum is a one-shot panacea can be challenging, and then you get materials that aren't really aligned to standards, and things become really muddy and muddled. So the need to have transparency, the need to be able to say these materials really work really well in classrooms like this, and when I use these materials, here's the kind of adjustments I had to make to who, story, and how, et cetera, for the students in my classroom. And the ability to help the field see, like, A, what does quality mean, and what do we mean by quality? And 2, what do we do with materials? Like, okay, I've already spent my $5 million on bad things. What am I supposed to do now? Or I'm about to spend $5 million. How do I not spend it on bad things? And so how do you really provide guideposts that are transparent so that that money can be well spent, and the work on the ground, I think, can be well reflected.
Abby, it appears you've been updated. Are you good to go? Do you have a microphone? Oh, technology, you silly thing.
Well, then I logged on with my phone because I didn't want to miss anything. And then I had 2 audios going and it was bad. So,
There's always one in every crowd, Abby. Welcome.
I know, right? It was me. I would like to echo a lot of what Kate said. I think for me, ultimately there's no perfect program, and I don't think it's worth that conversation of fighting about a perfect one. But I think it's important to know the ones that have good bones that we can work to improve and put our efforts into improving, and the ones that we don't, and we're like, we don't need to put our efforts into that. So I am a classroom teacher. I teach first grade, and I don't have a ton of spare time to be doing all this stuff with that. So if I know it's a quality program and I want to put efforts into making it even better, I want to know the ones that are there for that.
Right. And Kareem, we just quite frankly sort of hang on to every word that you say. Your insight is just always so stellar. So I'm speaking for Kareem Weaver. Look at me go. I feel as if we all sort of understand your why, because you have just expressed that so beautifully. Can you also talk to the why, and why your messaging now is so much about curriculum?
First of all, it's good to see people tonight. I'm glad to see people actually care about this topic. I see some familiar faces out there. I see David and a bunch of other people. I'm at New Orleans right now. I'm in a hotel, hoping the room service come at some point because I'm starving. but this is worth it. And this is a plain talk conference. It's a literacy conference. I do it every year, and it's really good. If you ever get a chance to come out here, I think, you know, I advise it. It's a really solid one. And my presentation day, I had it all set up. I was ready to go. This big thing about equity and all this stuff. And then last night with my partner Devika, I was like, man, screw that. I'm adding in some stuff about curriculum and usability. And I started to just dig into it. And I showed the folks in our session today the impact on teacher turnover and teacher training and preparation and how that feeds into this. And also just fatigue. I know it's a strange topic, but I'm like, people are exhausted. I mean, if teachers are exhausted, and it's not, I know since COVID, it's been even more so, but like, if we're serious about, you know, all these mission statement buzzwords, equity and all kids and diversity, we're going to be inclusive and all of that. Okay. All right, fine. Let me see your curriculum. Don't tell me you're going after all kids and your curriculum how out with that image that you showed like 7,000. Stop playing. Come on. And there's a lot of that. And people are spending good money. And they signal their intention, they signal their virtue that they care about the kids. But if it doesn't line up, it's a problem. And I think it's not the whole thing, but it's a part of it. It's a part of it. So for me, you know, when Karen approached me about this and I was like, look, you know, even if I'm not an evaluator or a person, like I can be involved in messages. At least I have time for that. If you will agree to count for usability. She's like, yeah, we got that. That's part of it. I was like, I'm in. Sign me up. I know it's not all about usability, but that's the only way you unshackle your teachers because they're not so worn out trying to keep up with the thousands of pages of this and the manuals. Now they actually have time to breathe into the thing and reach their kids and adapt it and all this. So anyway, I'm happy that this is actually taking place. You know, I had 4 different publishers approach me today. So y'all should know the word is out on this. They hit me up. Hey, Kareem, I heard that what is this I hear about so and so? Yeah, you heard right. Yeah, it's happening. Well, who's going to be involved? I don't know. We'll see. It's anonymous. And even if it was anonymous, I wouldn't tell you. Like, I think that's good. I think it's good that publishers are accountable to the sector. Teachers are they're the folks who are actually in there with the materials and they get to see what's really going on. And don't get me wrong, I respect what Ed Reports has contributed to the field. I'm not bashing Ed Reports, but it's not getting the job done right now. It's just not. And I've talked with folks who have worked for Ed Reports and they don't even consider results at all in their algorithm. Usability half the time they don't, if you don't pass certain things, they don't even get to use, like, it just, come on. And there are some things that are green on there that just like it makes you wonder. No pun intended. But I'm involved because it's the right thing to do. I see you laughing, Abby. You caught that. I see. You know, look, it just is what it is. At some point you have to empower the people who are using these things to give their perspectives. That to me, that's what this is. It's teachers having an opportunity to share their voice, you know, anonymously, so you can't track them down and hold it over their heads. They send in that screenshot or they, you know, talk about their experience with a certain curriculum or whatever. Hey, it is what it is. You know, and I will give one publisher in particular credit. They rightly intuited, I guess they must have found out some way that one of their programs was going to be evaluated. It is. I saw the list. It's on there. But they were like, okay, all right. Like, you know, that's the past. We made that program. If we had to do it over again, we probably would do it a little bit differently, but now we're working on something else, but okay. And I was like, you know what? That's a good attitude to have. Like, don't run from it. Stand on it. If you put that out there, especially if you sell it, stand on it. You know, and then you can promise to get better or whatever it is, but let's stop hiding. And we have to give people the information to make informed choices. Now, Whether or not people will listen, that's a whole nother conversation. That's a whole nother conversation. You know, you can lead a horse to the water, but you can't make him drink type deal. But it's definitely something that needs to happen. So I just want to say thank you to the organizers of this, everybody who was, you know, some of the people who will be doing some of the evaluations and whatnot are here. Then also Karen, who really, you know, I hats off to you for cooking this up and being willing to do this and put feet on it. I respect you tremendously. And for those who check in, like I know it's whatever Wednesday night or whatever, but thank you for to show that you actually care about this topic. And hopefully, not to get too far ahead of myself, but hopefully the word spreads. You know, more views, more information, more insight is better. Tell the other teacher colleagues, like let them know, like what they're experiencing. We want to know about it so that we can make so people can make informed choices, and it will push the publishers to do better. What's wrong with that? So I'm glad that you all have convened this, and hopefully this is just a first start. I saw the list of ones that you began, or you know, that we're beginning with, but you know, there's a whole bunch of other ones that could use this too. So thank you for the organizers, and thank you for those people who are attending tonight. But that's why I'm involved. It's just the right thing to do. And even though I'm not looking at the reviews, I got my hands tied with a whole bunch of other stuff right now. You know, I'm happy to be involved, message it, support it however I can, because it is definitely needed, especially around usability. So
Thank you so much, sir. As a teacher myself, it is so refreshing as a practitioner to be offered a seat at the table. You know, it's difficult to change a practice if you don't have the practitioner's voice. I'm seeing a lot about UFly, and as usual, I did not introduce myself. My name is Virginia Kunmuni. I'm a classroom teacher, and I am a moderator on Donna Heitmanick's Facebook page. And sorry, I also teach first grade, and I have first grade kids pick their noses all the time, itis. So excuse the voice. But I'm sure as all of you are members of the page, you know that one of the leading questions that we always get is about curriculum. And the reason why we get the question so much is because the good news is curriculum is changing. The better news is that there's this group of individuals here now to make sure that the changes are going in the right direction. Donna, I'm going to put you on the spot. I don't know if you did want to jump in on the current trends that we're seeing on the page or not. I know you were busy.
Thanks. Yeah, I guess I could start my video. Hello, everyone. Thanks for doing this. It's so needed. We are inundated with curriculum questions. I would say that's our number one question. If we get this, what about this? You know, comparing things. And it's, you know, we can't answer those questions, nor should we. And so, you know, I don't know where this is going to head, but I think just teachers, and there's a whole lot of you guys who need to be heard, and to, you know, collective voices will make a difference. And, you know, maybe we could start simplifying things instead of making them so complicated. It doesn't have to be so hard for you guys in the trenches. And whatever I can do, or whatever Science of Reading can do, we're in. Thanks
Donna,
for
can I
having
just
me.
respond to that right quick? What you just said is so important. But so here's a conundrum, and I've talked with publishers. What they say is your state approvers of curricula, you know, you got to get approval from the state or whatever. They have this checklist of things that we got to include. You got to have something for second language learners. You got to have something for kids with learning differences. You got to have like, all this whole list. It's like a checklist. It's a bureaucrat's dream. And if we don't include more stuff to get all the checklist stuff accounted for, they're not gonna buy our product. So that is a very real challenge. I'm just gonna name that. I get it. And hopefully, and this is so what I would just say, it's also an opportunity because it's a challenge for all of them. So go figure it out. Figure it
Mhm.
out. So like, may the best ones win. Like there has to be with all of them, but it has to be a demand from the consumer, from the educators to say we want this, and then they'll have to respond. But I get the conundrum. I understand how complicated things are and all the stuff they gotta check off. Well, that's your opportunity to figure it out, and we want to be able to put a spotlight on those who are figuring that piece out, as well as making sure they hit the things they need to hit.
Yeah. Well, let me respond to that too. As you were speaking, my first thought was it comes down to money. I mean, these companies want money. They want real money, and they will do anything to get people to buy their products. It could be the presentation was better than the last guy's presentation, so we're going to go with this product, and that's so unfortunate. Like you said, this is very complex, but I think once we get our teachers' voices in there, and maybe even administrators, let's get this ball rolling, because it's really hard every day to day to help the teachers when we don't have the answers. And we don't know what to say about curriculum. We've had many discussions about it. What do we say about curriculum? We just don't know. So, thank you.
Karen, I think you have your new catchphrase. Let them figure it out.
Yeah, well, I mean, that sense of
Bumper
don't
stickers
know.
for all.
I feel like the watchword about the curriculum space is opacity. We've got to be able to name it. Curriculum's really dense. I felt like I took years in this space, really deep in the curriculum space, before I got it enough to be dangerous, and then years more before I could really separate options from the field and compare them to each other. And so I have this really, if I'm a lead learner, I have this really healthy personal appreciation for how much I would have struggled if somebody said to me, it's an adoption year, go look at these things, figure it out, quick, do a pilot. Like, we need to take that opacity away. We need to make it easier to look under the hood and let people really even sort of narrow their focus on just a few curricula to go deeper on. And if we can do that, if we can just accelerate that process of getting down to your short list even, I think we can really do good things for the field.
Well, and Donna backed me up on this. I think that's the reason why we get 15 questions every hour on curriculum, and someone in the chat saying now, like, decisions do have to be made, and they want to make the right decisions. So
Right.
it's Abby, what was it that you said on Twitter? The Taylor Swift. I know the movie. Oh, come on, help me. Oh, Abby's frozen. Of course she is. It's something like, I've seen this movie before, but I don't like the ending. So, this is what we need to make sure it doesn't happen again. And unfortunately, once the decisions are made, there's no turning back. No district is going to make a different decision in 2 years because this was not the right one. And the other thing that's so good, Karen, about the work that, and Kata and Kareem and Abby and Kate, is it's from the voice of teachers, the ones that are actually doing it. A lot of the responses on the Facebook page is, ugh, run. It's like, okay, I appreciate the input, but, why? And is it just, personal? There's also a lot of conversation on here about UFly. And also the other thing that I do on the Facebook page probably daily is just type UFly. Anyone is asking a question about foundational, foundational, the answer is just UFly. And thank you, Holly, for making it an acronym so I can type it quicker. Holly, please feel free to just give me a thumbs down emoji. But if you did want to speak to how you got it so right, particularly for, those of us boots on the ground, you did really seem to take into account the teachers and how the teachers do carry out the curriculum.
Hey,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry, I'm as Karen knows, if I talk for very long today, I'm going to hack up a lung. So I'm coughing and sniffling. So, but I will say that the things that you're talking about, certainly efficacy, but really usability, were at the forefront for us. We spent a year just figuring out a program that was usable before we even then studied its efficacy and then decided maybe we should publish this. And I think that's backward from how it usually happens. It's let's publish this and then, oh, maybe we should go back and look at its usability and efficacy. And I think we need to reframe what the expectation is, because it is possible to develop solid programs, but it's not if you're rushing to market as the goal. You know, the market was never our goal. Obviously, we're not making money off of this, but we did want to make sure that teachers' lives might be a little bit easier because they weren't sifting through thousands of resources and had something pretty simple to follow. So anyway, I'm going to sign off before I start coughing. Sorry.
Sorry.
All right. Karen, I have not done the best job of checking the chat for questions. I've just been so transfixed by everyone speaking. Have you seen any that have jumped out at you?
You know, it's a really good question. There was a question about where we'll start and whether we will be focused on elementary versus middle and upper grades. And I wish we could clone ourselves, because these are all important problems. And I know that I'm going to get nods when I say that middle and upper grades get completely neglected unfairly in these conversations, as we all focus first on early grades. But we're going to focus first on early grades, elementary first, with every hope that we can expand to additional grade bands in short order. There must be other questions, and I do hope folks are really feeling welcome to share those in the chat. Oh, there's this question about when, and let me go ahead and take that one. The awesome news about this project is that we have seasoned experts, including seasoned expert educators using the programs, doing the reports. The other news, to state the obvious, is that all those people have day jobs, none of which are lightweight day jobs. So it's a little hard to talk about whens when you're talking about folks doing night and weekend work. Everyone is taking to heart the fact that it's adoption season, and we all wish we started in September. We say that all the time. We're also taking the Ben Franklinism, without haste but without rest, to heart. And so it's my expectation, looking at the way things are progressing, that we are just weeks away from the first reports coming out. It's probably a few more weeks away before the last reports come out, and we're really committed to having everything out by spring, because we know there are decisions being made. In a typical process like this, you wouldn't go ahead and say, these are the programs we're reviewing while you were in the middle of doing it. You've just put your reports out. We decided, with a lot of reflection, that we should say right up front what reports are being authored behind the scenes, because we know that folks are in the midst of doing their own decision making. And so before we put the reports out, we will talk about the criteria that we're reviewing against and get into that conversation. So hopefully, if we tell you we're looking at usability and the following criteria, and these are the programs we're looking at by nomination from the field, at least that starts to signal to people that there's something to talk about there. You know, watch this space, and in weeks, we're weeks away. Hopefully your review team can wait on this. If we put out our reports and we miss folks' decisions, which I hope doesn't happen often, but we know we're getting this off the ground in the middle of adoption season. That is what it is. We're also optimistic that pushing this conversation will help with people who are using these programs today. We have New York City educators on our team for Interreading who are using this program, and we know that more New York City schools will be using Interreading next year. If we do this thoughtfully, we can give look-fors to the educators using these programs that are also just as useful in deciding how to be effective with a program that you are using as they're useful in deciding which program to use. So hopefully not that these reports will do double duty. Y'all must have other questions, by the way.
And there's a question about publishers being able to rebut or respond to something before it's released. Any thoughts on that?
So it's a really good question, and we haven't talked a lot about this publicly. I definitely have every expectation of reaching out to all of the named publishers to be asking them for information about what, on that question about efficacy. I don't presume to know every quality study that's been done of all of these programs. So of course, we'll be reaching out for input on that and sharing what we receive from publishers. So there will be an open dialogue there. That said, I really trust the process of what a group of educators using programs and PD leaders and literacy leaders who've been in classrooms using these programs have to say about programs. And so I think that in it's the year 2024, publishers have much bigger marketing and PR teams than our little grassroots project. And I think that publishers have every channel they need to respond openly after our open reports come out, and will be, I think, all better for the discourse that happens, out there in the open. I'd be really interested in hearing from Kareem and others on this question of usability and what makes something usable. Because usability is one of those things that has been so forgotten sometimes in the conversation, that it's when you get into the discussion of, well, what makes something easier to use, that you start to come up with, it can sometimes even be easier to talk about what makes things hard to use. So Kareem, I'll hand to you first, because I always love hearing you talk on this topic, but others, your thoughts on what good looks like are just as interesting as how we name those look-fors of what makes things challenging.
So thanks, Karen. So there's a couple pieces to usability. One is the volume of material, the synthesis of materials itself that you have to navigate. Okay, the clarity of the instructions and the guidance. But then also it's the very simple measure: how long does it take me to have to prepare for full implementation of this thing? That's it. And I'm not talking about a grade level meeting or community of practice or whatever the new thing is, professional learning community. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you're sitting there with your stuff. It's just you in the room with your stuff. How long does it take? How long? And the reason why that's important, matter of fact, I'm not going to show you the slides. Because most teachers have some sort of a contract with their unified district, and it actually tells them how much time they get to prepare each week for all subjects, like for everything. And it ranges anywhere from the lowest I've seen is 100 minutes of those who have prep. And the highest, I had everyone stand up today at Plain Talk and sit down when I reached their number. And there was a guy, the last guy standing, their district has 450 minutes a week of prep. I know, Patty, I know. And I was like, somebody loves kids.
Where
That
is
was
this
my
place,
response.
Kareem? Where is this place?
He told me, but I don't remember.
Wow.
Oh, wait. I don't remember. I don't want to say the wrong district. I asked him. I actually had I walked up to him in the crowd and said, "Where are you from?" And people were just stunned. Now, the reason why I mention that is fundamentally that school district should be looking at different options than the 100-minute a week district. It just because with 450 minutes a week, you know, you can really get ready to serve all kids. Okay. And if a program is you know, like a labyrinthian, like you have time, 450 minutes. I mean, you know, that's my thinking. I'm thinking that you probably have time to navigate it. But at 100 minutes a week, you shouldn't even be, that committee should know from the very beginning, this is not our lane. It may look good, it may be well wrought, it may have all the stuff, you don't have time to do it. And so I gave them an example of, one was a gourmet kitchen, and the other one was like the old Showtime Set It and Forget It in a crock pot. I was like, sometimes, you know, there's nothing wrong with a crock pot, but if you have like your contract is a crock pot, fine. If your contract gives you time to make gourmet meals, fine. You just have to make sure that you're cooking the right meals that fits your structure. And the publishers, they really haven't had to wrestle with this because we haven't really asked them. It's not like a menu. You go buy a cookbook and it says, you know, this meal takes 45 minutes to prepare ingredients, and then it takes this long to cook. They haven't had to do that because nobody's asking. Well, we're asking. And that's the bottom line. So usability is about the ability for me to navigate things. Is it confusing? Is there clarity of guidance and instruction of what to do? Now, I understand some people say, well, it's a script. Come on, you're a teacher. You don't have to follow a script. But you should at least tell me what I'm supposed to do. You can give two people the same recipe, and my goodness, they're going to come out with completely different food. It's the same thing with teachers. So I don't worry about that. But what I do know is that the materials have to be usable so that people can then breathe life into them. It has to have the time element under control. It has to be understandable. It has to be efficient. Like that's the number one thing. And so I'm elated that we're going to be looking at the projects we'll be looking at usability, because I think it's an often underlooked, and people are just, and I said this in my thing today, people are just exhausted. They're exhausted. If you're really trying to go after all kids, like this is what happened to me. So maybe this is why I should just say, this is why it's so close to my heart. This cost me a marriage. It did. My ex-wife, may she rest in peace, we talked about this. She's like, yeah, like all night, every night, you're staying up, creating stuff, you're doing it. You were married to those kids. You weren't really married to me. She's right. Because I was giving, like, I had to make bricks without straw. I didn't have it wasn't usable. I had to make up my own stuff, and I had to figure all this stuff out. That takes, if you want to go after all kids, I shouldn't be punished. My family shouldn't be punished because I want to serve children well. And usability is a number one indicator of whether or not that's going to happen or not. Is it usable? Is it understandable? Is it coherent? Does it make intuitive sense? Is it organized well? And how much time does it take me to figure this thing out and plan so I can do a good job? Right. So that's what we mean by usability. It's really a common sense measure. The only one I've seen to address it even a little bit was Student Achievement Partners, when they had learning curve in their K2 assessment for these curriculum options that they had. Like, and there were very big differences, even among the quote unquote high quality instructional materials. Huge differences. In fact, they described one, I'm looking at it in my presentation, I kind of called them out today. And it says, this is Student Achievement Partners, steep learning curve for teachers to implement, but strong PD is available. Materials are lengthy, voluminous, and take time for teachers to get to know during implementation. Voluminous. Now, if you have 150 or 200 minutes a week to prepare, and the materials are voluminous, come on, then you really have no intention of reaching those kids in your mission statement. This is just all virtue signaling. Give me some materials that I can use that I know works. There's evidence of success, but I know it's going to work. And I have the ability to actually plan for full implementation, and then I can actually cook it. I can actually put my own personality and get the cultural relevancy and all this stuff, because now I, as a teacher, can add art to it and breathe into it, because it's actually usable within the bounds of my contract. And the last thing I say on that is this. You say, well, Kareem, if you're about it as a teacher, you'll just do it. You'll do what it takes. Okay. I was about it as a teacher. I did what it took. My kids learn to read. What I'm telling you is you have to make this usable for regular people to do the job. You can't have like a trail of bodies from people who just burn out and quit because it just wasn't usable. And on top of that, not only does it have to be usable for regular people, well, I better stop. I just think it's a matter of ethics. It's because if it's not usable, then you're not really going after the kids that you say you are. So that's what I'd say. And I'm glad this is the first time that someone's really stepped up and said, you know what? Let's take a look at that. Let's take it. And that's one of the main reasons why I'm like, okay, yeah, if you're gonna do that, people need to know. If nothing else, does this stuff even fit our structure? And I get the pressures of putting stuff in a box. I get it. You got to check the box for this group and that group. I get it. Okay, well, figure it out. That's your job. Figure it out. Right. So that's where I stand on that. That's what I mean by using.
Well, as the person that will be using the curriculum, I cannot tell you how true and right that is, and how appreciated by every teacher. I'm shocked that there's not all these applause icons all over the place. That really cannot be more true. I think it's the reason why teachers were dressing as the U-Fly manual for Halloween, because they have a usable product. And I also appreciated how you mentioned professional development, because too often manuals are placed on our desk over the weekend when we return without, giving us the option to make it usable outside of our own time. And I apologize, Karen, if you could, I think my voice is pretty much almost done.
I think that actually we're at time, but the fact that professional development is coming up makes me think, we've spent not nearly enough of this hour talking about professional development. It's categorically true that teachers who've come to better understand the science of reading, better understand the importance of building background knowledge for children and the role of that in comprehension, teachers who've had really good professional learning on how you scaffold grade level texts to help give access to all learners. All of those are enabling conditions for success with these materials. It's equally true that we've seen districts be very successful adopting high quality materials and doing the professional learning in parallel. I think there's, in fact, we see equal success for districts that take the year to do PD first versus those that say, let's parallel track this. But no question, there has to be that planned investment. There has to be planned multi-year investment. You have to be taking other things off teachers' plates. This can't be one of the 4 initiatives of the year. Time and professional learning are just watchwords in this. So let that be the last word, because I wouldn't want anyone to think that anyone here thinks that this work begins and ends with the materials. I put a link to Abby's piece in the chat, and she gives beautiful voice to how much there's a multi-layered set of things that we're all trying to accomplish here. But let curriculum not be forgotten. Let us bring better insight into the space so that hopefully we can make these conversations less theoretical, more practical and tangible. And I want to echo Kareem's thanks to everyone for taking the time this evening, and Virginia for organizing.
Of course. Thanks so much, everybody.